Hello, welcome to the Oikos Family Podcast, episode 32. I'm Sonja Wood. Today I want to share with you from Corinthians chapter 4, where it says from verse 8, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed." And the reason why I wanted to start with that today is to share with you that that's a sort of week that it's felt like for me since I last spoke with you. And that being, we've been perplexed and hard-pressed and feeling as though we've been crushed down. But we're not destroyed. That's the good news. So I wanted to let you know today that you too are not destroyed. And I thank you for listening. I thank you for being there to listen, because that's just one thing to be grateful for, that I can talk to you and that you are there and able to listen to this podcast and that you are listening to this podcast. So again, I feel quite overwhelmed at the privilege of that. But I specifically feel to encourage you today in what you are doing, in your calling and your walk and your journey. And the reason being is that I, this last week, have heard one distressing story after the next, one real heartbreaking account of children that are being hurt, children that are suffering, children that are not being protected. So if the only reason for me speaking to you on this podcast today is to say thank you for protecting your children and loving them and caring for them, even if you are feeling perplexed and even if you are feeling crushed and what was it saying earlier on? Hang on. Perplexed, in despair and persecuted and struck down. Even if you are feeling those various emotions, I want to tell you that the Word of God says, I'm going back to that again, it says you are not destroyed. So there are children out there that it would appear that their life is destroyed, but then there's others that are jumping in and rescuing them and helping them and loving them and giving them a home and a place of safety. So I visited such places in this last week, whereby I went and saw and experienced situations that are very, very heartbreaking, where you see children that are needing that place of safety because of their circumstances being so dire. Somebody has stepped in, pulled them out of their dire circumstances, and they're not destroyed, and those people are loving them. So I want to thank those people who love the children. That's what I want to do. I want to say thank you for loving the children. And if you're a mom that's listening to this podcast and you're at home with your children and you're feeling as though you're being crushed from all sides, or you're just having some negative emotions for whatever reason, you've had a hard day or a difficult week, for whatever the reasons might be, that might be a whole lot of little reasons all piling up and it's just feeling too much for you. And there could also be some really colossal reasons, but nothing is bigger and greater than our God, you see. So no matter how big our problem feels to us, we know that we are not destroyed because He is with us. And I suppose today's podcast was more about me just feeling thankful to you for loving your children, caring for them, taking care of them, being for them what God needs you to be for them. There are so many desperate cases out there of children that are not being loved in the way that you have opportunity to for your own families, your own children. So this is to say thank you. Again, I'm saying thank you. I can't say it enough, because I think that's what I must do. I must come onto this podcast and thank you. Thank you for walking this journey with your children. If you happen to be a parent that's listening to this and maybe feeling some negative emotions about feeling overwhelmed, possibly with some things that are happening in your own life, well, I just want to encourage you by thanking you, actually, because there's so many children that are suffering in the most inconceivable ways. And the choice that you have made to love your children, to care for them, to educate them, to protect them, that's what I want to thank you for. So today's podcast is about Thanksgiving, and to remind you that you are not crushed, and to remind you that you are not destroyed, and you won't be, and you can't be, no matter how big the problem. And so that is all. Thank you for joining me today on this podcast. I am overwhelmed that I have the opportunity to be able to share with you. I have a lot of hesitation here, as you might have picked up, because I'm wanting to tell you some of the stories of what I've heard in the last week, and it's just too horrific. I can't tell you because I don't know how to verbalize it. It's too distressing. So instead, I'm thanking you for joining me today and just listening to these few moments of this podcast whereby I can encourage you by thanking you to continue in what you're called to do. And do it with joy and with that sense of knowing that what you are doing is so, so, so important and so necessary. And even if you can't see it, and if you're not experiencing the fruit yet of what you hope for, you will experience the fruit, because your children are being loved and they're being protected. So there will be fruit from that. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.